Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. My name again is Shayna Jack, your usual host for the series of webinar. Today we have with us our wonderful Senior Director at PSS, Sonja Shute. She's going to talk about our latest initiative that PSS is always having new initiative to help better the capacity of our client and our caregiver in the community. So today she's going to talk to us about building a dementia-friendly community. We'll welcome Sonja. Sonja, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Shaina. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Hope it works. There we go. All right. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Shaina, for coordinating this this webinar. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone and provide a little bit of information about our Dementia-Friendly Communities Initiative. As Shaina mentioned, my name is Sonja Shute. I'm the Senior Director of PSS Circle of Care, which is our caregiver support program. And today I'm going to be talking specifically about a relatively new initiative that we have entitled the Dementia Friendly Communities Initiative. But before I jump into that, I just want to give a little bit of context and a little bit of background so everyone is familiar with what PSS is. PSS was founded in 1962. We were founded by volunteers, in fact, who were serving older members of the church community. However, we have evolved significantly over the years, and today we are an innovative multi-service organization, and we're ultimately working for New York City's older adults, their caregivers, and their families. Ultimately, we are striving to strengthen their capacity to thrive and create community. Now, how do we do that? So PSS operates 10 senior centers. We have funding through the New York City Department for the Aging. We operate 10 senior centers in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan. We also have 2 senior apartments. One is our Alberta Alston Apartments, which is located in Corona, Queens. And then we also have our Grandparent Family Apartments, which is a 50-unit apartment complex that we operate in collaboration with the West Side Housing Federation. And we ultimately offer apartments to kinship caregivers, so grandparents that are raising grandchildren. Wishfish operates the bricks and the mortar and, works to administer the rent, and PSS administers the social services. What's really unique about our Grandparent Family Apartments was that it was in fact the first of its kind in the entire country. So the first apartment complex dedicated exclusively to kinship caregivers. We also have our Coming of Age program. Our Coming of Age program helps people that are 50 and older to live with passion and purpose. And it really helps people to transition to that second phase or second chapter of their life. We also have our PSS Life University, which is ultimately a rich schedule of different educational training, workshops, events, including our wide array of webinars such as this one. And all that information is available on our website at pssusa.org. Under events, you will find all of our events under PSS Life University listed there. And then, of course, we have our Circle of Care caregiving program. We offer support to caregivers in all 5 boroughs of New York City. We have funding through the New York State Department of Health, and we also have funding through the New York City Department for the Aging. So PSS has in fact been helping family caregivers for over 20 years. And we do that in a number of different ways. We provide consultations, we offer support groups, we coordinate educational and training events, and we plan social activities for caregivers and care recipients. So when we thought about the work that we are doing in New York City, and we thought about it really objectively, it occurred to us that, you know what? Our staff are ultimately out in the community working to establish dementia-friendly communities. They're out in the community raising awareness about dementia. They're providing caregivers with the skills and the tools that they need to be a more effective caregivers. And they're ultimately working to reduce the stigma. So when we thought about it, we thought, you know what? Why don't we establish a model? Why don't we establish a model that allows our staff to do this work, but in a way that's structured and allows them to really focus on local communities to help them to become more dementia friendly. So what is a dementia friendly community? A dementia friendly community is ultimately one where the community members of that particular community are empowered to embrace and support those with dementia. So in a community that is defined in that way, those community members understand dementia and the challenges caregivers face. They are aware of the resources that they can direct fellow community members to. And they also are familiar with the skills and techniques that enable them to interact more successfully and supportively. And also one of the most critical defining features of this dementia-friendly communities model is one where people with dementia and their caregivers are actively involved in the process of creating communities that are in fact more dementia-friendly. So for example, if you think about a community and you think about a caregiver, someone who's caring for someone who's affected by dementia, and they're out in the community and they may find it, it can be difficult to take the person they're caring for to the grocery store, for example, depending on how far along their loved one has progressed. But if you imagine a community where the staff at the grocery store are equipped with the knowledge, the understanding, the information they need to really understand perhaps what that particular individual might be going through and have the tools to effectively communicate, it's ultimately going to create a much more supportive environment for someone who is affected by dementia, but also for their caregiver. So that is what we are striving to do. So according to our PSS Dementia-Friendly Communities model, we really based our model on principles of grassroots community organizing. Because New York City is so vast, it would be extremely challenging to, just in one swoop, make all of New York City dementia friendly. But what we are working to support our staff to do is work with local individual communities, however that is defined, work with them to identify key leaders, stakeholders, caregivers, and people affected in the early stages of dementia to really engage them in this process. Our model consists of 14 steps, and those steps were ultimately created to help provide staff with the structure they need to work to really organize these local communities. And we are very proud to report that we are now a member of Dementia Friendly America. So Dementia Friendly Communities, as you may be aware, is in fact an international movement. And then here within the United States, we have Dementia Friendly America. And as I mentioned, we are now a member, and that allows us to become a member of a network of organizations and community groups that are working to make their communities dementia friendly across the entire country. In some cases, these communities can be on a much smaller, and then in other instances, they're in an urban center. But it really provides a really important forum where we can all share successes and challenges, and also access some of the great tools that Dementia Friendly America has made available. So as I mentioned, our initiative is grassroots and community oriented. And in this way, our efforts are really localized. We are working with the community at the grassroots level to build up, as opposed to starting with the entire town or city, as I had mentioned. So, for example, a community can be defined in many different ways. A community can be defined by geography. It can be a neighborhood, but a community can also be defined by faith. It can be defined by culture. It can be defined in many, many different ways. So that is what we at PSS Circle of Care are ultimately striving to do, to work with some of these local communities throughout all 5 boroughs of New York City, and to help them to really identify the priorities and drive the agenda forward. Because at the end of the day, the members of that community and the caregivers and the people who are affected by dementia are in fact the experts in terms of what are the assets of that community, what are the needs. So we work with them to help facilitate that conversation. So as I had mentioned, we created a 14-step model that ultimately helps guide the work of PSS in these locally defined communities. But what we've learned along the way is that there's some critical steps that we need to engage in if we're ultimately going to be successful. So for example, it's really, really important that when we start out with this work that we are working to really define that community. So as I mentioned, again, that community can be defined by faith, it can be defined by culture, or it in fact can be defined by geography. It's ultimately a group of people who have a vested interest in creating a supportive environment free of stigma. But we work really hard to identify that community, then also to ensure that we understand that it is we understand clearly what defines that particular community. And as with any grassroots community organizing movement, another critical factor or feature is working to identify those key leaders and stakeholders. So we want to work with those leaders because those leaders and those stakeholders are the ones who have the networks. And they're the people who really ultimately can help us to build that momentum and generate enthusiasm around the initiative. Working with those key stakeholders, we built a DFC council. So the DFC council, once we've defined the community, the DFC council is really the group that is doing the work. They're the ones who are identifying the priorities and driving the agenda forward. Our role is to facilitate that conversation. So when we launch a DFC initiative, once we've identified a community and we're out there and we're launching our initiative, we'll do what we're doing right now. We'll work to raise awareness. And then from that experience, often people who are enthusiastic or interested in becoming a part of the initiative or the movement will step forward. And oftentimes it's those people who form a critical part of the DFC Council. Another really important defining feature of the model is a focus group. So we work to establish a focus group specifically for those who are experiencing dementia and or their caregivers. As I mentioned, a really critical defining feature of the dementia-friendly community model is capturing the voices of the people who are affected by dementia as well as their caregivers. Ultimately, this initiative is about reducing the stigma associated with dementia, and as such, it's really important that their voices, their thoughts, their ideas are captured. Additionally, we, as part of the initiative, we host a public forum on understanding dementia. And we work to identify dementia-friendly community ambassadors. So those ambassadors are ultimately the key leaders or stakeholders. Those are the people, whenever you're working with a group, you always have a couple of members who step up, step forward, and are motivated to take the lead. That's who our DFC ambassadors are. And we also make sure that we follow up with the availability of our services. So we are working with the community to help make it more dementia friendly and reduce the stigma associated with dementia. But as part of that, we want to make sure that the community is aware of the resources that are available. So as I had mentioned, we really work hard to establish that DFC focus group. We work hard to coordinate that DFC council. We ensure that we're recruiting our ambassadors, the leaders of the initiative, who can really help us to move things forward and identify the priorities. Because we work with local communities, we work with them. Any effective outreach strategy involves customizing communication materials specific to that particular community. So we will work with the community to ensure our communication materials are effective. And who better to know what, in fact, our communication materials should include than those who are, in fact, members of that particular community. We host a wide array of educational workshops and trainings, and we will also work to host and facilitate support groups within that community. So by the conclusion of each dementia-friendly communities initiative, we have established a focus group for caregivers and care receivers who are affected by dementia and their caregivers. And again, the purpose of that focus group is to ultimately provide a structured forum that we can include their thoughts, their ideas, and their voices. We establish a dementia-friendly community council. As I mentioned, that is the group that really, helps us to identify what are the community assets, what are the community needs, and how do we work together to really make this community more dementia friendly. Our staff offer one community-wide understanding dementia presentation and at least one communication campaign customized for that community. We make sure our services, Circle of Care services, are made available to caregivers in that community. That, in fact, we are working to make that community more supportive for those caregivers and the people who are affected by dementia. We host and facilitate one support group, and we offer and we have make sure that our DFC ambassadors are play a really critical role on that leadership council. PSS Circle of Care has quite a good menu of different workshops and trainings that we are able to offer members of the community, particularly caregivers, in order to equip them with the skills and the tools they need to be more effective caregivers and to feel more empowered in their role. So, for example, our staff offer powerful tools for caregivers. We offer Dementia Raw. So Dementia Raw is a really fun and innovative training that couples the pillars of empathy with the rules of improv. And in that way, we're able to equip caregivers with the tools they need to simplify communication with a person who is affected by dementia. So we make that workshop available. And then we also work, our staff are trained in the REST model, which is ultimately a program that allows us to train volunteers in the community that are interested in providing volunteer respite care to caregivers. So for example, if I'm a caregiver, but I really need a break, there might be my neighbor who in fact is trained in the REST program could come over, help to support me in my role by caring for my loved one while I step out and go to the grocery store. So that's another really important training program that we make available to our dementia-friendly communities. And it's very relevant, as you can see, to the dementia-friendly community movement. We strive to create a final summary report, and we also will award a DFC certificate to the community or community members to acknowledge all the great work that they're doing in the community. So you're probably wondering, what have we been doing and where have we been working? So far in Brooklyn, we're working in the East Flatbush neighborhood in collaboration with the Philip Howard NORC. In Queens, we're working in the St. Albans neighborhood. In Manhattan, we are working in Morningside Gardens. There's a NORC there that we're working to launch our dementia-friendly community initiative. We are working in the South Shore of Staten Island and also launching in the Melrose neighborhood of the Bronx. So we're excited to have a presence in all 5 boroughs of New York City. So this slide I really like, and I think it's really interesting because it really highlights the diverse range of ideas and action items that are generated because we're based in a grassroots community organizing model. Every dementia-friendly community can look a little bit different. And the ideas that leadership council and those focus groups generate are very different depending on the specific community. So I should mention, these are all ideas and are in progress. But some of the ideas that have been generated and the work we have done include, we've worked in collaboration with 2 separate NORCs, both Philip Howard, and we've also done some work Morningside Gardens to educate their doorman, their security, and their custodial staff about dementia. That was a priority that the community identified. At another NORC, they're currently in the process. They had experience with residents that were affected by dementia and were beginning to wander. So based on their experience as a community, they thought that it might be helpful if they could generate an emergency call system. This has just been launched insofar as we're working to raise awareness, and we're working in collaboration with the NORC to help people become aware that this is available and working, getting people signed up. But ultimately, they base this on their experience in that community. They identified a need and then really got creative in terms of brainstorming around, well, now we know we have a need. How can we best work together to address that need? Some other ideas that have been generated, again, works in progress, but other ideas that have been generated was the training, working in collaboration with a high school program and training those students in the REST model. So in this way, these students would be trained to become volunteers and provide volunteer respite care to caregivers in their community. Another community wants to engage the business improvement district in the memory cafe model. So a memory cafe is basically a safe and supportive environment where a caregiver and a care receiver can go together to meet with other caregivers and other people who are affected by memory loss. And they can come together at a designated time in a designated location. And it's basically a safe and supportive environment. It can be very isolating for a caregiver who is caring for someone who's experiencing memory loss for the very first time. And as we know, there can be a lot of stigma associated with, in fact, having dementia. So it's really important that our caregivers and the people, their loved ones, have a safe and supportive environment. So memory cafes are very popular across the country. But in this particular instance, this community thought, you know what? Why don't we engage members of our business improvement district and see if we can work together to host memory cafes in our various locations within our community. Another community they created a peer-to-peer program. So ultimately what that was, or is they have caregivers who may have found themselves in the caregiving role for a longer period of time, buddied up with someone who is new to their caregiving role. So they provide a peer-to-peer or a support system for each other. So if I'm new to my caregiving role, I can call my peer and, if I have a question or if I'm having a hard day or if I'm in need of support, it's really, a supportive program that allows caregivers to really ultimately increase their network of support. And then another community is really, they are interested in engaging the broader neighborhood in the initiative. So ultimately, when we think of a dementia-friendly community, we think of a cross-sector approach. We think of a community in which we're engaging the healthcare sector, the business sector, the faith sector, the community-based sector. But as per our model and what we've observed, we start with a very small, locally defined community. But what we've noticed is that over time, that slowly and organically evolves to engage different members in different sectors of the community. So we've been doing this since the fall of 2018, and it's been really interesting to watch it organically evolve and grow over time. But there's certainly been some patterns and trends that we've noticed. But the ultimate objective is to start in these local communities and then ultimately grow to become a cross-sector approach. And of course, these are pictures of our wonderful team. The photo on the left is a presentation that was done at a senior center in the Bronx. It was an understanding dementia presentation in the Melrose community. And then the photo on the right is an image from the work we're doing on the South Shore of Staten Island. Here is some of the great work we're doing in St. Albans, Queens. This is members of our leadership council. As I mentioned, they're really critical to setting those priorities and driving that agenda. And it was this group that spearheaded the peer-to-peer program that I was speaking of. So with that, I will open it up to any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Sonja. Amazing, great presentation.
Thank you.
If anybody has any question, you can just add them on the Q&A box. That's the only thing I didn't mention, but I know most of you knows where to put the question. Again, thank you, Sonja. And then if you guys don't have any question and also you want to view the presentation again, it will be saved and posted on our website at pssusa.org/resources. And you can see all the past webinars that we have, what we had. all the type of subject and topics that we discussed last week, last month, and even last year. We still have some up there. And also, if you want any information about our caregiver program, you can also visit us at PSS USA, psscaregiver.org. Any questions? Well, it was very detailed, and I guess everybody understood the main point of our new initiative. Oh, there's a question. How are the volunteers screened? That's the question, Sonja.
So the volunteers for the dementia-friendly community, because if that's in fact the volunteers that are being referenced, those volunteers aren't necessarily screened per se because they, the people who are involved in the actual initiative, because they're not necessarily providing a direct service. They're just working together to generate ideas and work towards creating a community that's more dementia-friendly. If, in fact, the reference was in regards to the volunteers for the REST program, those volunteers undergo a background check. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, and then I can also add that some of our volunteers that participate in our, they are ambassador or focus group, they are also caregivers. So they are, oh, okay, it was for the REST program.
Yes, yeah.
The REST program, so we are trained to train as volunteer, right? So
yeah.
So yes, we can train the volunteer, and then from there, so they will be, we're not placing any volunteer, but we can train the volunteer. Yes, of course.
Yes, and then we work in collaboration with, with different organizations. So if they're interested in launching the REST program in their particular community, we would work in collaboration with that community-based organization with their volunteers. And then they would work to do the background checks.
Yes.
But every volunteer is effectively screened. Yeah.
Okay.
If anyone is interested in any more information, you can give me a directly. My number is 917-734-6428. Again, that's 917-734-6428. And I'd be happy to have a conversation and answer any questions you may have. If you're interested in learning more or are interested in becoming involved, be very happy to have that conversation. About our dementia-friendly community initiative, as well as any of the other services or programs that we have available. Or if you're in fact interested in launching the REST program, have that conversation too.
Yes. Any other questions? So everything will be posted online to our website. Please visit us on our website. There's a bunch of information there. The past one that you can find interesting and that can be helpful for your family or your community. Yes, that pretty much conclude our presentation today. Also, if you want any of other information, you can reach out to Sonja or you can reach out to me. My number also is 917-734-9292. And of course, my information has been sent to you when you registered. So you can just reply to that same email. It will come directly to me. Again, thank you. And thank you, Sonja. Have a great weekend. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks so much, Shane. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Sonja. Bye-bye.